Welcome to Top Stories Hub. Today we've got a new story. Can you guess how it ends? Looking back, I should have caught on sooner, but back in my wild younger days, I was too caught up in dreams and the thrill of a fresh start to see it coming. I'll never forget the day I first laid eyes on Emily. I was pushing my late 20s, brimming with big plans and this goofy, unstoppable positivity, but there was this quiet melancholy in her smile that I couldn't miss. She had this calm toughness about her, a grit that pulled me right in, even though I could feel a hint of fragility lurking underneath from the get-go. Pretty soon, I found out she was raising little Ava all on her own, a spunky 5-year-old with bright eyes who turned our house into a whirlwind of giggles and non-stop action. Right then, holding Ava's tiny hand while she babbled about her day, I knew I was hooked, not just on Emily, but on this little girl who'd already started calling me Dad. Those early times. Man, every second felt holy, like something you couldn't replace. I swelled with pride over the littlest things, tucking Ava into bed at night, sitting patiently with her through homework projects, or showing her how to pedal her bike in the park on those warm, sunny afternoons. Each chuckle, every tear I brushed away, every soft word I offered, they were like bricks stacking up into what I swore was the rock-solid base of our quirky little family. I was convinced I'd put together something that'd last forever, steady and dependable, like a house built to weather any storm. But as the years rolled by, these faint little clues started popping up, like hairline cracks sneaking across a wall I thought was unbreakable. I can still picture this one time when I caught a quick flicker of uncertainty in Emily's eyes, a shadow that darted by so fast it left me wondering if I was really as locked in as I thought. My best buddy, Mike Johnson, would drop these hushed warnings every now and then, advice I brushed off at first. Those words stuck with me, though, bouncing around my head whenever I noticed a waver in Emily's voice or a pause in her grin. Sarah, Mike's wife, would nudge me softly too, hinting that things weren't quite what they looked like, that love and sticking by someone could carry a price tag I hadn't seen yet. Deep down, though, I shoved those red flags aside, chalking them up to someone overanalyzing a connection they couldn't possibly get. Some nights, I'd just sit there in the living room, the stillness of the dark wrapping me up as I flipped through old pics, Ava's first birthday, that day she wobbled her bike for the first time. I'd shake my head in awe at how easy it had been to step into being a dad to a kid who didn't share my blood, feeling good knowing I'd brought her the warmth and steadiness she'd missed out on early. I kept telling myself every late night and tough choice was worth it, not just carving out a life for me, but piecing together the jagged bits of a history marked by promises that didn't pan out. Now that I'm looking back, it's clear as day those warning signs were staring me in the face the whole time. Every little split in our family's groundwork was a nudge that stuff wasn't as solid as it seemed. I was so wrapped up in the glow of our good times that I tuned out the sneaky hints of trouble, the quick looks, the words left hanging, the silences that screamed louder than anything. Never in a million years did I think the guy I'd set out to be, the one wiping tears and patching up skinned knees, would end up slamming into the hard fact that love and sticking around don't always lock you into someone's life forever. It crept up on me slow, like water trickling through a crack, chipping away at this fortress I figured was indestructible. Here I am now, stuck with memories that warm me up and cut me deep all at once. I can still hear every little secret we swapped, every quiet wish we breathed out, every vow I made in the dead of night. But mixed in with those golden moments, I'm hauling around a heavy truth that even the toughest setups can buckle, leaving you with just the leftovers of what used to be and this gut-punch realization that sometimes love alone doesn't cut it. I always figured family was about showing up for every high and low. When Ava got engaged, my chest swelled with this proud, electric buzz. I could see this shiny future where we'd toast every big win together. But pretty quick, things started shifting. In the weeks before her engagement bash, I felt this gap growing, like I was being nudged out bit by bit. At first, I tried to shrug it off as me just overthinking, my nerves getting the better of me, but the clues kept piling up. Our living room chat started orbiting around this new name I didn't know, Ethan. I can still see Emily dropping it like it was nothing, sipping tea in our cozy little kitchen. Ethan's been a big help with the planning, she said, all casual-like. Her tone was light as air, but to me, that name rang out like a judge's gavel. Ethan, this dude who'd slid into our world without even a handshake. I kept telling myself he was just pitching in with the small stuff, that it wouldn't go anywhere, but as the days ticked by, I couldn't unsee it. Every meeting about the party, every laugh over Ava's next chapter, it was like I was getting boxed out. I'd end up parked on the sidelines while they tossed ideas around with this guy who was now sitting in a spot I'd held dear for years. Watching them gear up for that engagement party had me on edge, my stomach twisting more every day. I used to think my place as Ava's dad was untouchable, burned through endless nights of stories, band-aids on cuts, and those soft reassurances that meant everything. I'd been there for it all, figuring my love had etched me a permanent spot in her heart. But with every plan I wasn't part of, every call made without me, that spot felt like it was shrinking fast. It hit me, I wasn't the guy who knew her hopes or worries anymore, I was just another face in the crowd at events that used to feel like home. The day of the party sealed it for me. I walked in expecting open arms, but instead, every word, every scheme, every second belonged to a crew that felt like a whole different clan. The room buzzed with happy talk about what's next, but I was stuck in this cold bubble, miles away from the joy. I'd try to pipe up, toss out questions about stuff I used to run point on, but all I'd get were tight smiles and a smooth pivot to something else. Standing there, just watching, it sank in, Ethan wasn't some background helper anymore. Every look Emily shot his way screamed a bond one didn't fit into anymore. Right then, my brain started spinning through all the years I'd poured into Ava, the knees I'd fixed, the tales I'd spun by lamplight, the late-night chats about what she wanted out of life. How could someone who meant so much to me let a stranger waltz into those moments? It hit like a slap of icy wind, I'd been swapped out, quiet but brutal. I felt like some dude crashing a party that used to be mine, a stranger in my own kid's world. Anger and hurt wrestled inside me, and I kept asking myself how the hell I ended up so cut out. That night, I slipped out of the party without a fuss, lugging this heavy sense of being double-crossed. Driving off, the echoes of that night stuck with me, the house lights dimming in my rearview. I knew right then that the life I'd built, the ties I'd tended, were splitting open, and I couldn't pretend otherwise. I was lost, fumbling to figure out how to grab back what I'd held so close. Every mile I put between me and that mess had me wondering if all the love I'd thrown out there would ever be enough to pull me back into the family I thought I knew. Looking at it now, those red flags were waving right in front of me, tucked into every little snub and every hushed mention of Ethan. The life I'd dreamed up with Ava and Emily was morphing right before me, forcing me to face a truth I never wanted to swallow. I always figured I'd forged this unbreakable link with Ava, something time and chaos couldn't touch. I'd spent years raising her up, steering her right, making damn sure she never felt alone. But as the months flipped by, this quiet shift started creeping in, a slow, aching push I couldn't brush off anymore. I'll never shake the day I first saw Ethan next to Emily, chatting like it was nothing, and it made my gut drop. He was stepping into a space I'd owned with pride once. I'd poured everything into being the dad Ava needed, and now I was stuck watching some other guy ease into that role I'd treasured. Seeing him take my spot hit me like a freight train. I'd lain awake so many nights picturing a life where Ava'd always lean on me for advice, where my words would hush her fears and cheer her wins. But instead, his easy voice and warm chuckles filled the corners that used to be all mine. Every talk I had with Emily started threading in his takes, his ideas weaving into our family's fabric. I was turning into a ghost, just hovering on the edges of a life that didn't feel like mine anymore. The hard truth was staring me down, I was getting phased out, bit by bit. The days blurred into weeks, and that reality dug in deeper. I'd catch Ethan's laugh mixing with Ava's from a distance, a sound that used to be just for me, and it'd send this cold loneliness seeping through me, tinged with the sharp sting of being stabbed in the back. I'd always thought love was this ironclad thing, but there I was, watching some guy I didn't even know swipe my place as her dad. I started second-guessing every call I'd made, every time I'd bent over backward hoping we'd come out tighter. That solid ground I'd worked so hard to lay down was falling apart right under me, and I couldn't do a damn thing to stop it. I'd try to open up to Emily about how bad it was tearing me up, praying she'd get how deep it cut, but she'd just toss out a breezy, "Ethan's only helping," like that could patch the hole growing inside me. Every time she said it, it burned worse, proving I'd lost the spot I'd battled to keep. In those still moments, I'd replay every second we'd had together, each story I'd read her, every scrape I'd patched up with care, every little grin that told me I was her rock. Now, those precious pieces were fading under the harsh light of being pushed out. Sitting there in the dark late at night, I'd think back on the promises I'd made Ava, ones I swore were bulletproof, and wonder how some random dude could just stroll in and take over a life I'd built with blood, sweat, and heart. Day by day, Ethan's shadow loomed larger, and I started feeling more like a guest in my own house than the dad who'd always been all in. That gnawing pain of being pushed aside never let up. It was this constant jab, reminding me that even the people you count on most can leave you hollowed out and double-crossed. I held tight to this fading dream that Ava might one day clock all I'd given up for her, that she'd recall the comfort of my hugs and the way my voice used to settle her down. I was dying for that split second when she'd get it. No one could ever take the place of the connection we'd hammered out through years of giggles, sobs, and big hopes we'd dreamed up together. But as the weather got chillier and the gap between us stretched wider, that flicker of hope started slipping away into something I could barely hang on to. The guy who'd stepped into my shoes wasn't just passing through, he was planting roots in the life I used to know, leaving me stranded on the outskirts of a family I didn't fit into anymore. There I was, standing in the quiet wreckage of my heart, wrestling with the brutal fact that I'd been swapped out, and no matter what I tried, I couldn't claw back what I'd lost. I can still see the day that envelope showed up like it was yesterday. I was slumped in the living room, all by myself, trying to wrap my head around how far apart me and the family I'd poured everything into had drifted. The mail guy dropped off this letter with clean, tidy handwriting, and I figured it was gonna be an invite to something good, another chance for us to come back together. But when I cracked it open and unfolded the page, the words inside smashed me to pieces. It was for Ava's wedding, a day I'd been pumped for, full of pride and big expectations. Except, in stark, cold ink, it said Ethan was the one giving her away. The room started spinning when it sank in, he'd fully taken my place, and it crashed over me like a wave I couldn't outrun. I'd been the rock in her life for years, holding her hand when she was freaked out, cheering like a fool for every little win she racked up. I'd given up sleep, my own ease, even chunks of my happiness to build something with her I thought would stick forever. That invite, with its heartless phrasing, screamed that all those years didn't mean squat. They'd shoved me aside out of nowhere, turning me into just some guy watching a moment that was supposed to be mine. In the days after, I dug into the memories of our laughs and those times I thought locked us tight together, searching for some kind of peace. I'd run through every second I'd held her up, every time I'd rooted for her, but each one just twisted the knife deeper. That piece of paper was a slap-in-the-face wake-up call. Even the strongest setup can get torn down by stuff I couldn't steer. I kept asking myself how Emily could act like it was no big deal, how she could just wipe me out of Ava's life like it was nothing. I'd lie awake nights, replaying all those hours I'd spent listening to Ava's wild dreams and quiet scares, wondering when the hints of me getting pushed out got so loud. I used to think love was all it took to cement your spot in someone's world, but now I was staring down the ugly truth that sticking by someone and giving it all might not pay off. Holding that invite, my hands shaking like crazy, it hit me, everything flipped in a heartbeat. The guy I'd let in to help carry the load was now the one calling the shots for our future, and I was left scratching my head about where I even belonged. The light outside seemed to dim, and the shadows creeping across the floor matched the black hole growing in my chest. I sat there mute the rest of that day, clinging to some ghost of what we'd had, back when I was the go-to guy, the one patching up cuts and drying tears in the still night. Instead, I felt like some dusty leftover from a time that didn't count anymore. Every tick of the clock drove it home harder. I wasn't just replaced in name, I'd lost the core of who I was supposed to be. That little voice in my head muttering about betrayal and loss wouldn't shut up, getting louder every time I thought about that damn invite. No amount of pretending could erase the sting, and that invite wasn't just paper, it was the last spike in the coffin of a bond I'd sworn was forever. The hurt was fresh and real, proof that even the toughest love can get smashed by the cold choices of people you die for. I sat there for hours, tangled up in fury and sadness, unable to shake the sense that I'd been kicked out of the life I'd busted my ass to build. In that hushed moment, it clicked, everything I'd put together was falling apart, and the future wasn't gonna hold the love I used to know. The wedding days burned into my brain. It was this crisp, bright morning, full of promise but weighed down by this silent grief I couldn't shake. I'd been gearing up for it forever, picturing myself standing proud next to Ava as she kicked off her new chapter. But right from the jump, something felt off. The church was decked out with soft white ribbons and pretty flowers, buzzing with laughs and light tunes, but when I walked in, this icy void settled over me. The warmth I was used to wasn't there. Instead, I felt like some outsider crashing a party that didn't belong to me anymore. When the ceremony kicked off, I was scanning hard for any hint I still had a place in Ava's universe. Then I saw Ethan, all smug and steady, walking her down the aisle. Every step she took shoved me further into the shadows. I'd been the one calming her down during thunderstorms, pumping her up when she nailed riding her bike, celebrating every tiny triumph. Now, every smooth move she made felt like someone else was rewriting the part I'd loved playing. My chest tightened as it hit me, the years of care and heart I'd poured in were getting drowned out by this guy I hardly knew, who was now holding the spot in her life I'd always thought was mine. The whole ceremony, I just sat there quiet, every little thing slicing deeper than the last. The gentle music floating around used to bring back nights of bedtime tales and hushed dreams we'd shared at home. Now, it just highlighted this gut-wrenching change. Everyone around me melted into this blur of happy grins and murmured wishes for what's next, while I was stuck, locked in this bubble of being let down. Every time I caught Ava's beaming face or the way her eyes lit up for Ethan, that sting of being left out hit harder. I felt like a nobody, like some faint outline hanging around the edges of a life that had moved on without me. Then the speeches started, and the room filled up with talk about the fresh start Ethan stood for. His smooth, sure words rolled out, tossing around Ava memories that should have been mine to hold close. I sat there, fists balled up, feeling every word chip away at the roots of what I thought we'd grown together over years of real moments. Each nice thing he said twisted my past with her into something that didn't leave room for all the hours I'd spent lifting her up, showing her the ropes, loving her with everything I had. I kept hoping, in this quiet, frantic way, to lock eyes with Ava during it all, just for a second, thinking she might catch the weight of everything we'd been through. I was aching for one glance that'd say, "I remember it all, Dad," but she was zeroed in ahead, smiling at the life she was grabbing with Ethan. Realizing I'd turned into this uninvited extra in my own kid's story was this crushing load I couldn't shake. When the last notes of the wedding tune faded out, this deep emptiness sank into me, proof I wasn't part of the family I'd known anymore. I slipped out of the reception without a word, dodging the small talk and backslaps that just rubbed salt in the wound of everything I'd lost. The crisp morning air hit me outside, but it didn't do much to cool the fire raging in my chest. Every step I took away from that place felt like I was peeling myself further from the life I'd thrown my whole self into. Deep down, I knew those echoes of laughs, love, and even the tears we'd cried together were turning into these half-sweet, half-painful scraps of a story that was done for good. That wedding, it was supposed to be about coming together, but for me, it ended up as the quiet curtain call on everything I'd been. Walking off, I was hauling this crushing weight, knowing I'd been swapped out, and all the love I'd dumped into every second was now just some far-off echo, stuck ringing in the emptiness I left behind. For weeks, I'd been dodging my phone's constant buzzing, but that day, it was like it wouldn't let up, demanding I finally deal with it. I was parked alone in the living room's faint glow, wrestling with that old sting of loss and being stabbed in the back, when the call rolled in. I let it hum a few times, my pulse thumping loud as flashes of giggles and whispered secrets with Ava and Emily slammed up against the blank hole I was stuck in now. Then a voicemail popped up, Ava's voice, all chipper and laid back, like it didn't fit the mess we were in. She rattled off stuff about honeymoon plans, some fancy resort, and the pricey dinners they'd splurged on, acting like nothing had shifted between us. But then, under that breezy laugh, I caught this shaky little wobble. "Dad, we kinda overshot the budget, could you bail us out, just this once?" Her words bounced around my head like a twisted punchline. I shut my eyes, feeling the heft of what she was asking settle on me like a ton of bricks. They'd kicked me to the curb, scrubbed me out of their lives, but now they were reaching out, only because they needed cash. A rough, bitter chuckle slipped out as I let out a slow breath, my mind fogging up with this mix of hurt and giving up. "Sorry, Ava, I can't do it," I muttered out loud, my voice coming out sharper and colder than I meant it to. The silence stretched out after, heavy with all the years we'd had, every banged-up knee I'd fixed, every nighttime story I'd read, every time I thought I was the one who really got her. In that quiet, I could almost hear the ghosts of all those moments I'd shown up, the promises I'd made to always have her back. Then she hit me with this shaky laugh, part begging, part brushing it off. "Come on, Dad, you've always come through for me," she said, her voice cracking with something I couldn't pin down, maybe guilt, maybe a ache for what was, maybe a pinch of sorry. My jaw tightened, a hot spike of anger mixing with the sadness that had been piling up over time. I thought back to all those nights I'd patched up her hurts, the ones you could see and the ones you couldn't, always there to prop her up when her world was crashing down. "Yeah, I sure have," I shot back, the words tasting like acid in my mouth. Her voice dropped low, barely there. "Is this about the wedding?" Right then, that day that ripped us apart roared back, raw and real as ever. When I answered, my tone was steady, but it carried this sharp edge I'd kept buried for too long. "It's about respect, Ava, and I finally figured out how to respect myself." The line went dead quiet for a beat too long, then clicked off, leaving me alone with the dark and this icy truth that nothing was ever gonna be the same. In that hush afterward, it felt like I was teetering between what used to be and what had never come back. Every word she'd said, every little pause, was a kick in the gut, reminding me of the life we'd pieced together and the one that had collapsed around me. I wondered if she even got it. Every time she asked for something, it was like she was trying to swap out our old love for this bitter sting of being used. Sitting there, wrestling with the fresh ache of being ditched, I felt this weird mix of losing everything and a strange lift. That call made me face it head on. I'd been her dad, her buddy, her rock, only to get tossed aside when it was about convenience and dollar signs. And in that, I found this dark kind of clear-headedness, a tough but needed shove toward grabbing back the pride I'd let slip. I knew going forward I'd have to cut loose from the past, even if it meant swallowing that some bridges, once torched, stay down for good. I was sitting there in the late afternoon's dim light, my study dead quiet except for the low drone of my own head spinning. Emily had called earlier, her voice cutting sharp and loaded with rage. I could still hear every word she threw at me, each one slicing through the scraps of hope I'd been clinging to forever. "You think you can just vanish and let it all fall to pieces?" She'd yelled, and I could practically see the fire in her eyes through the phone. Her tone was hard as nails, dripping with this sour edge that left my heart sore with regret and this sinking feeling I couldn't shake. Right then, I knew the truth I'd been ducking was finally coming for me, no running from it now. That talk left me rattled, dragging me into facing a slow rut that had been eating at us for years. I'd thrown my whole self into Ava, pouring every drop of love and effort into every second we had. I'd figured I was this solid piece of her life, something steady in all the ups and downs. But Emily's anger laid it bare, nothing was how it looked. She was pissed, saying I hadn't been there enough, hadn't fought tooth and nail for what we used to have, but deep down, I knew the real villain was this creeping fact that had been building up. Ethan wasn't just some sidekick or pal anymore, he'd turned into something bigger, wiping out the memories of everything I'd put together. As the day dragged on, I ended up by the window, watching the light fade and throw long, mournful shadows over the beat-up wood floor. My mind wandered back to the bits that got us here, the offhand grins that hid something more, the quiet little chats I'd written off as nothing much. I could still see how Emily's face would brighten up every time she said Ethan's name, like he was some shiny new start, a kind of solid ground I couldn't offer anymore. That hit me so hard it almost knocked me over. Ethan wasn't just stepping into Ava's life, he was the poster boy for everything I was losing. In those still moments, staring into space, I started picking apart every choice I'd made, every time I'd stretched myself thin hoping we'd build a family that could take on anything life threw at us. Emily's fury kept ringing in my head, a brutal nudge that our old days were falling apart. I flashed back to this blowout fight months ago. She'd called me out for being too stuck, too set in how I'd always done things. I tried to tell her love takes time, that you can't rush the good stuff, but her words cut me open, leaving scars I wasn't sure would ever fade. Now, staring down Ethan's growing shadow, I saw those old hurts were just the start of a bigger break, something all my care and heart couldn't fix. The cold, hard truth was right there. I'd given Ava everything, but now some guy who'd rolled in with promises I couldn't touch was outshining me. In this rare, raw showdown, all our worst fights came rushing back. You don't know what it's like to be replaced, I'd told her once, my voice shaking with rage and hurt. She'd fired back, ice cold, you let him in, you let him take what was yours. Those words stuck with me, haunting me as I tried to patch up the broken bits of a life that used to feel whole. I started figuring out that Ethan wasn't just some guy I was competing with or a simple stand-in, he was a sign of a shift that had been locked in from day one. He kept popping up as this nagging proof that even the tightest ties can get chewed up by stuff I couldn't wrangle. Sitting there by myself, lost in my head, I felt betrayal's heavy boot pressing down hard. Emily's rage wasn't just her taking swings at me, it was her howling out the pain of a life that had veered off into something I never saw coming. The cold, hard fact was staring me down. Ethan had slid into the spot I used to fill, a spot I'd never really owned to begin with. In that lonely second, I swallowed the rough truth that our family wasn't a unit anymore, not from one big backstab, but from this slow rot of trust and love we'd let fester. I pushed my hand against the chilly window, like I could grab onto one last shred of control. Anger, sadness, and the sour kick of reality whipped up into this emotional mess I couldn't dodge anymore. Emily's blow-up had ripped the cover off what Ethan really meant, and with it, the stone-cold reality that I'd turned into a leftover piece of my own kid's life. Whispers of our old days floated through the room's quiet, pushing me to face a future as shaky as it was unavoidable. Every tick of time just widened the gulf between what I'd had and what was sprawled out ahead. Right then, all alone, I shut my eyes and took in that final truth, its weight hitting me like a load I had to carry but also a weird kind of freedom. The days after brought this hushed peace with what I couldn't fix, and in that still moment, I mumbled a quiet goodbye to the life I used to know. One morning, I woke up to a quiet so thick it outweighed any racket I'd ever heard. The house felt hollow, every corner bouncing back faded echoes of laughs from a past that was long gone. I used to think our big dreams together would pave a road full of brightness and promise. Now, though, those dreams were just wreckage, smashed up like glass shards on a freezing floor. It was like the whole base I'd built my world on had caved in, leaving me with nothing but this empty stretch of wishing and what-ifs. I could still trace how it all fell apart, bit by bit. At first, it was little things, a word here, a look there, hinting something was wrong. Emily's warm grins got short and far off, and the soft promises I'd leaned on started ringing empty. I'd thrown my whole heart into our crew, convinced every tough call paid off in seeing Ava bloom into the sharp, sunny kid I always knew she'd be. But the harder I clung, the clearer it got, the perfect picture I'd painted was buckling under the real deal. Every day dragged in another nudge of what I'd lost. I'd roam the empty hallways of our place, where every photo on the wall and knick-knack on a shelf murmured about better times. I'd think back to nights reading Ava's stories, her eyes big with amazement, and those calm minutes when I swore our love couldn't break. Now, those flashes burned like sour keepsakes of a life that wasn't there anymore. The dreams that used to light me up had turned on me, leaving me feeling sold out. That hope that kept me going. Swapped out for this stark wake-up call that nothing was ever gonna be like it was. Late at night, I'd sit by the window, watching the moon stretch long shadows over the beat-up floorboards. The silence hit hard, nothing like the lively buzz and chuckles that used to fill the place up. I kept turning over every move I'd made, every promise I'd banked on like it was a sure thing. I'd figured love could bulldoze anything, that sticking it out and giving my all would glue us tight no matter what. But here I was, facing down the brutal fact that sometimes the stuff we treasure most just falls apart, leaving nothing behind but busted hopes and this deep, hollow ache. That fairy tale of a flawless family life had crumbled away, piece by piece, till all that was left was the mess of what used to be. I'd try to pull up those times I felt really connected, when Emily and Ava made me feel seen and worth something. But every memory got stained with the truth that those bits were quick and brittle, gone in a flash. The guy I'd been, full-on husband, doting dad, was shrunk down to just a flicker of who I was, stuck in a life that didn't claim me anymore. Standing there, wrestling with this crushing sadness, I felt something else kick in too, this faint grit starting to form in the middle of the gloom. Even as that dream world crashed around me, I saw there was a shot at something fresh in the rubble. I got it, hanging on to a past that didn't mean anything anymore was just locking me in a loop of kicking myself. I had to figure out how to build again, to grab back the chunks of me buried in the wreck of promises that didn't hold. Little by little, I started seeing that one dream dying just kicked off another one. The hurt cut deep, and the memories had a bitter edge, but I decided I'd take something from the mess. Every broken shard of our old life carried a nugget about love, losing, and what it takes to pick up and start fresh when it all feels gone. With shaky steps, I pulled away from the leftovers of what I'd known, lugging this stubborn drive to carve out a new road, even if it was foggy and lonely sometimes. In the calm after that dream went up in smoke, I let myself mourn what I'd lost. I owned up to the fact that no matter how hard you love, the tomorrow you picture might never show up. And in that, I dug up this shaky little hope, a hunch that out of the ashes of that old fantasy, something new could sprout someday, even if I had to carry yesterday's scars along for the ride. I can still see the day Emily showed up at my door like it's etched into my skull. The gray sky matched the heavy lump in my chest, and every shuffle toward the door felt loaded with this sense of done-deal dread. I'd had a hunch this was coming, but nothing braced me for the gut punch of feeling that hit right then. There she was, eyes puffy with tears and second-guessing, that bright grin of hers now just a washed-out shadow of good days gone. She stood there on the edge, and the quiet between us thickened up, aching with all the stuff we'd never had the guts to spit out. She didn't waste time, just murmured, "I miss you," her voice wobbling with the weight of a past we both knew we couldn't claw back. In her eyes, I caught flickers of everything we'd had, the laughs that used to brighten our days, the quiet hopes we'd spun for a future that was trashed now, and the sorries we never said, dangling there like thin, breakable glass. In that hushed gap, I asked her soft, "You missing me, or just what I did for you?" It was a plain question, but it cut deep, hanging there as a throwback to all I'd laid on the line, nights spent soothing her, days I'd handed over my heart without holding back. Her face twisted up even more, and in this shaky little whisper, she let out, "I screwed up." Those words slammed into me like a blast of icy air, dragging up the sting of every letdown and every chance we'd missed to fix what was busted. I thought back to those late nights I'd stayed up, gripping tight to this fading wish that we could pull our family back together, that the love we'd built could patch up the gaping cuts. But staring at her now, I could tell the gap had stretched too far, and us splitting for good was just a matter of time. "Can't we just hash it out?" she begged, her hand stretching toward me like she could grab hold of what was left of yesterday. But every move I made closer just hit me with the gut punch that the window for patching things had slammed shut ages ago. My voice stayed low, but it was laced with the hurt and sour taste of years gone down the drain. "What's there to talk about? How you let some other guy step into my shoes? How you only showed up again when it was way past fixing?" The words landed hard between us, ringing with the hard truth that time and decisions we couldn't take back had worn our connection down to nothing. Right then, the pain was too big to handle. I pulled back, putting space between us like I was trying to guard the last scraps of my beat-up pride. I scanned her eyes, hunting for any flicker of the love that used to tie us together, but all I got back was this mix of sorry and giving up. Those old days of ours, the quiet buzz of laughing together, the soft comfort of a hug, felt like far-off whispers from a life that didn't belong to either of us anymore. Every heartbeat thumped with this final vibe as I turned away, each step a rough goodbye to the years I'd sunk into a love that had dried up over time. Heading down that silent street, the evening chill matched the dead feeling that had settled inside me. It hit me that the farewell we just had wasn't only about what we'd lost between us, it was for the guy I used to be too. I was lugging around the marks of being double-crossed and the weight of memories that felt more like shackles than treasures now. Every thud of my boots on the cracked sidewalk was another nail in the coffin of that chapter, cutting me loose for good from the life I'd been holding onto like a lifeline. In that last, lonely second of walking away, I muttered a quiet send-off to the dreams and plans we'd cooked up together. The door clicked shut behind me, soft but final, and I knew the life we'd had was just a shadow slipping into the dark. That last goodbye wasn't some big, loud scene, it was hushed, a slow unwind of a love that had played itself out. As I faded into the night, I came to terms with the fact that some roads, once they're torched, stay gone, and sometimes the only way to keep yourself whole is to say so long and walk off for real. One sharp morning, I woke up with this odd lightness I hadn't felt in forever. That crushing load of losing everything and being stabbed in the back was starting to peel off, leaving this empty space that didn't hurt anymore. It was weirdly freeing. I stepped out into the crisp air, every breath hitting me like a nudge that I was still kicking, still able to hit reset. The life I'd known had crashed down into rubble, a spot where I'd been swapped out, ignored, and sold out. But in that mess, I spotted the start of something fresh. I got it now, freedom wasn't about dodging pain, it was picking up and letting go of what was behind me to grab whatever's next. For ages, I'd hung on to flashes of laughs, nighttime tales, and quiet evenings fixing Ava's scraped knees, dead sure my place as her dad was rock solid and untouchable. But the cold truth was, even the toughest links can snap under time and stuff you can't live up to. Strolling those empty streets, I thought back to the rough days of being pushed out and the cutting whispers that said I wasn't wanted anymore. But with every stride, I also remembered the steady grit I'd grown, the bounce back from getting crushed, the guts I found alone, and the drive to piece together a life that was all mine. In that morning calm, I made a quiet promise to find myself again. I wasn't gonna let the past's ghosts call the shots on what's ahead. I kicked off with the little joys I'd let slip away, like sipping hot coffee in the early hush, feeling the breeze tease through the trees, hearing the city's soft rumble as it woke up to a million what-ifs. Every tiny bit sparked this fresh vibe in me. I figured out the freedom I was after wasn't about erasing the people I'd loved, it was owning that life's got its ending so new starts can roll in. The days after were full of small, wobbly moves towards something new. I signed up for an art class down the street, something I'd always wanted to try but never got around to, and found out I could paint, letting out pieces of my soul I'd kept locked up tight. Every swipe of the brush spilled out the pain and the hope tangled up inside me. I started spotting beauty in the mess and power in being open. Just making something out of nothing handed me a purpose I hadn't felt in years. I caught myself yakking less about what was and more about what could be, dreams I could mold, free from the old aches I'd carried. Bit by bit, I built new ties with folks who got that life's a string of stops and starts. I ran into others who'd tasted loss too and found the kick of letting it go. Their tales, swapped over low-key dinners and long park strolls, hit home with me. That freedom I was starting to wrap my arms around. It spread like wildfire, a gentle strength that let us patch up together. The rage and hurt that used to color every thought I had slowly morphed into this steady push to craft a life about growing, respecting myself, and real bonds. Even as I kept moving, the past stayed scratched into my heart, not as wounds, but as takeaways. I saw that getting replaced in one part didn't shrink the love I'd dished out or the guy I'd turned into. My losses didn't own me anymore, my knack for climbing past them did. I learned forgiving myself, more than anything, was the freest thing I could do. So, day by day, I stepped further from the life that had tied me to regrets and closer to a freedom I didn't know I had coming. I get it now, one story wrapping up isn't the end of it all, it's just a breather before the next trip kicks off. Diving into the unknown, I found this toughness that had been chilling there, tucked under layers of old hurt, waiting. I decided the future's not some blank nothing, it's a blank slate begging for my own loud colors. Standing here now, with the sunrise lighting up my way, I know real freedom's about owning what's behind me, taking what it taught, and pushing ahead with a little hope in every move I make. Thanks for joining us on Top Stories Hub. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and share your thoughts in the comments below.